The Sony a6000 is still a great hybrid camera for anyone looking for a budget mirrorless camera in 2021. You can get one of these used for about £300 to £400, but it does have a few limitations when it comes to video. Today I would like to address those limitations and show you a few solutions that are cost effective and will improve the quality of this camera massively. Each of the solutions I'm going to share with you today are relatively cost effective and they're also evergreen. That means that these will last way beyond this particular camera. So if you buy this Sony a6000 on a used deal and then you ended up upgrading to a Sony a6500, a6600, a lot of these things are still going to be useful, and even with other cameras outside of the Sony a6000 lineup. These solutions will not only improve your a6000, but it'll also improve your approach to filmmaking and in terms of problem solving and getting around various negative points of older budget cameras. The first problem we're going to address here with the Sony a6000 is the battery life. These rock the old Sony NP-FW50 batteries, and they are tiny, and often you would need a whole bunch of these if you were to go on a longer shoot. So you need to find a way around this. One of the best options we have here is using a dummy battery. Dummy batteries look a little something like this. They're essentially the shape of your camera's native battery, but then with a power cord adapter. This particular one has a USB that connects via a DC adapter, and then we can put that into a portable USB power bank. With this, we can then run the camera for much longer than its original runtime of about an hour to an hour and a half on this Sony a6000, and put it up to somewhere closer to about 4 hours off of something like this with continuous recording. This much larger battery does then bring with it another problem, and that is, this is huge. Where are we going to put this on this tiny camera? It's bigger than the actual camera itself. So what we can do is mount the camera into a small reed cage, and then with this small reed cage we can attach a power adapter clamp, and this will act as not only a power source but also an additional hand grip. With this adapter now mounted onto the small reed cage, I'm just going to pop it onto this tripod over here. Oh shit. These small reed cages have plenty of thread mounts on the bottom to mount any sort of base plate that you might want to use, and then you can keep the camera in this cage and it gives it a little bit more body, which for me is really helpful as my hands are a bit larger than this camera. It is a little bit small to hold just the body itself. Okay, you can just about see this monster right now. This has now solved our battery issue. Now the camera is up and running and it will last on this battery for a significant period of time. The next thing I'd like to touch on with this camera is the lens options. As I mentioned in my previous video, we have lenses like this, the Sony 16mm f2.8, which is a great little pancake lens that works really nicely as a little vlogging self-filming lens. But this likely isn't the option you'd want to go for if you're trying to create some more cinematic videos, but this does work for general everyday filming and setups like this one. One of the main benefits to this lens with this camera is that the lens is autofocus and the camera has continuous AF. So if you were to film yourself, you could be confident that this is going to keep you in focus the entire time as long as your framing is correct. Sony does have some affordable prime lenses available, such as the Sony 50mm 1.8, but the really good thing about the Sony E-mount is that we can also adapt a whole variety of lenses. As an example, we have this Helios old vintage lens. We can adapt lenses like this quite easily. This uses the M42 Pentax mount, and I actually have this going to a Minolta MD adapter and then an MD to an NEX adapter, which is the E-mount. As a lot of my vintage glass is Minolta, I tend to have everything going via an MD adapter. So that way I only ever need the MD to E-mount adapter for adapting the majority of my vintage glass. So this gives us a 28mm f2.8 on this particular lens. The Helios was a 58mm f2, but this 28mm right here with a 1.6 times crop gives us close to about 45mm of focal length as full frame equivalent. So if you were after a cheap manual focus 50mm, this is a great option. And one of the really nice things about using vintage glass on these Sony cameras is because a lot of Sony's modern digital glass uses focus by wire and rather than linear focus, it sometimes can be quite hard to get a natural looking focus pull on the focus by wire lenses, whereas these vintage pieces of glass actually are completely physical. So this is linear focus, and we even have a focal distance meter along the top of the lens that will help us pinpoint our manual focus. For the moment, while we go back to doing some modern self-filming YouTube style stuff. We'll throw the Pancake back on. Again, really nice lens, only £110 used. It's fantastic. Another way that we can step up this lens is with a step-up ring. This is a 49mm to 67mm step-up ring for mounting various filters. So with this step-up ring mounted, we can then attach something like the Tiffin Black Pro Mist, which gives us a very nice aesthetic in a setup like this. This filter gives our lens a diffused characteristic so that anything in the background with lots of light would then become halated, and while doing that it also softens up a lot of detail. So if you're shooting people and you're trying to make them look a little bit prettier, a little bit smoother in the face, this is a really nice way of doing that without doing it in post that looks too unnatural. And filters like this are really amazing and adaptable using things like this very simple step-up ring that I've just shown you. We can then mount this onto the Minolta 28mm. Because both of these lenses have the same thread size as 49mm, they are then perfectly usable. This comes out to a full frame 45mm, and then we've got the diffusion filter on the end, and then also doing this on the 16mm. So between these two lenses, you would have a really nice setup to be able to get your wides and then also your mid telephoto. You can also use circular polarizers and variable ND filters. All of these achieve different looks, and they're always worth looking into if you're looking for a way to sort of upgrade and experiment with the visual elements of a camera. Always try to look into things like filters, like lights, before you look into upgrading the actual camera body. The last thing I'd like to address today is the lack of the flip screen on the Sony a6000. It's probably the most obvious thing. The best thing we have on the a6000 is its little tilt screen. So right now this is running off of the power bank at the moment. So if I unplug the power bank, we'll lose power. There you go. Put it back in. And it's back on. So at the moment, yeah, this is our entire problem. Oh, is it focusing? So yeah, at the moment, this lens is great where it is, but I can't see the back without looking into the screen of my A7C. So how do we solve this problem? This is one of the more expensive investments that I'd recommend to you, but it is still very worth your time and worth considering. Here we have a Feelworld Full HD monitor. This isn't a high-end monitor by any means. This will set you back about £90 to £100 at the moment on Amazon. There are many more expensive options out there, but if all you're looking for is a flip screen solution and you don't need anything that's particularly bright in the outdoors or that has too many focus assist features, you don't need to look much further. This still has things like zebras and peaking and color modes, so it is very customizable, but it does not have a touchscreen. So there are some slight drawbacks to this, but it will do a great job when you're looking at self-shooting. The monitor does flip around, so you can do it either way you want, and it will run off of Sony NP-F batteries or Canon LPE6 batteries, so the 5D batteries and the EOS R batteries. What we're going to do is pop in a mini USB, which is kind of annoying that it's mini and not micro, or USB-C, and then run it off of this power bank here. Then that means we've got power to both the monitor and the camera. The next thing to do is to get the HDMI out from the Sony a6000 and run this to the HDMI in on the monitor. Then with both of these having power running, we've then got the ability to self-film on the a6000. These are then both running off of this USB power bank, so that means that we don't need to worry about carrying batteries for the external monitor or for the camera. We can just do everything via the power bank, and this will last you most of a day of filming. These power banks are about £25 to £35 on Amazon from Anker, and if you get a couple of these, you are sorted for a full day no matter what. And then if you're recording onto large enough SD cards, you won't need to worry about filming or limitations at all. Pair this back up with a fancy diffusion filter and you have got yourself an absolutely amazing rig. This might look a bit big right now on this tripod. It's a bit up close and personal to the camera. You can see it's not the smallest thing in the world, but it's also nothing too crazy. I would normally have the screen reversed and flipped back, but with the USB you do need to sort of pick which side you're going to mount the monitor. This is easy to swap back, And usually you would tidy up the cables with things like Velcro straps just to make things a little bit easier while you're filming. But yes, you've given yourself a bigger hand grip, better diffusion, the option for some fancy vintage prime glass that can also mount the diffusion filter. Then you beasted up the Sony a6000 into a reliable self-shooting and filmmaking rig. Put that back in. That's going to be it from me today. I've had a lot of fun making this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching it, and I hope you've picked up a few little things here and there. All the items mentioned in today's video will be dropped in the description below, along with links for the used a6000, used 16mm, and I'll find the best links I can for the Minolta glass. I do recommend these a lot, but hard to find reliably at one cost, so I'll drop a few options in the description below. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.